The chamber of the Galactic Council was older than most stars. Its walls were carved from a single ring of black crystal that had never known repair. Every mark upon it was history. Every seat was a throne. Dozens of species filled the air with light, scent, and sound. Wings folded, scales shimmered. Voices echoed in layered tones that once commanded fleets and erased civilizations. Today, they believed they had survived humanity. The mood was confident. Too confident. Many of the counselors spoke at once, replaying images from the recent conflict. Human ships burning, human colonies lost. A short, brutal war that the galaxy had expected to last centuries had ended in months. The council told itself a comforting story. Humans were fierce, yes, but reckless. Brave, but limited. Their attack had been loud, dramatic, and ultimately contained.
The first wave had failed.
At the center of the chamber stood a single human. He was small compared to most present. No armor, no visible weapons. It's just a dark uniform and two calm eyes that moved slowly from face to face. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He waited. That unsettled some of them. One counselor, a towering being of gold-plated plates and burning blue eyes, finally addressed him. Its voice shook the chamber like distant thunder. It spoke of losses endured, borders held, of how the galaxy had stood firm against humanity's aggression. It demanded an explanation for the attack, and more importantly, an apology. Others joined in. Some mocked the humans for their final stand. Others laughed at the idea that a species so new had believed it could challenge the galaxy. The human listened. When the noise finally died down, the chamber expected pleading, or anger, or desperation. Instead, the human spoke softly. That was only the first wave. The words were simple, quiet, almost polite. The effect was immediate. The chamber went silent. Not the polite silence of ceremony, not the tense pause before debate. This was deeper. A heavy, spreading quiet that swallowed sound itself. Wings froze mid-motion. Translators hesitated, then confirmed the meaning. Several counselors leaned forward, unsure they had heard correctly. Only the human remained still. One counselor laughed, sharp and uneasy. It asked if this was a threat. Another demanded clarification. A third accused the human of bluffing, of trying to scare them after a defeat. The human shook his head slowly. No, he said. It is a statement. Images began to appear in the air, not dramatic battle footage, not explosions, data, charts, timelines, patterns. Human ships destroyed in the first days of the war, then replaced. Human formations shifting between engagements, retreats that now looked less like losses and more like measurements. The council watched as realization crept in. The human explained, calmly, that the first wave had never been meant to win. It had been meant to observe, to provoke responses, to test how fast the galaxy reacted, how it coordinated, how it adapted under pressure. Some counselors protested. They claimed victory. They listed human casualties, burned worlds, shattered fleets. The human did not deny any of it. Yes, he said. You destroyed what we sent. That was when the unease deepened. He continued, explaining that every ship lost had carried sensors instead of secrets, that every human commander had been ordered to push until failure, then record everything that followed, that the humans had learned more in those few months than centuries of distant observation could have taught them. A murmur spread through the chamber. One counselor finally asked the question none of them wanted to voice. If that was the first wave, where was the rest? The human looked up at the vast ceiling, where stars drifted slowly across the crystal like trapped fireflies. Everywhere, he said. The council demanded proof. The human gave it. Supply routes, once thought secure, flickered red. Minor systems went dark, not destroyed, but silent. Communication delays spread like cracks through glass. Human industrial output numbers appeared, and several counselors immediately tried to shut them down, calling them false. They were not false. The first wave, the human explained, had used old ships, designs already being phased out. Crews trained to fight, yes, but also to lose if necessary. Humanity had not brought its best. It had brought what it could afford to sacrifice. That word echoed in the chamber. Sacrifice. A reptilian counselor hissed that no sane species would bleed itself like that. that only fools wasted lives so freely. The human's eyes hardened, just slightly. "We do not waste them," he said. "We spend them carefully." The silence returned, heavier than before. A few counselors began speaking urgently among themselves. Private channels flared open and shut. One species quietly requested permission to leave the chamber. It was denied. The human continued, not raising his voice. He spoke of human history, of wars where they learned the same lesson again and again, that the enemy who adapts faster wins, that the enemy who plans for loss survives, that fear of casualties is a weakness if it blinds strategy. The Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had perfected balance, predictable wars, limited escalation, controlled destruction. Humans had grown up in chaos. As the humans spoke, the Council understood something too late. The first wave had not been an act of rage. It had been discipline, restraint, a leash held tight while data was gathered. One counselor asked quietly now what the humans wanted. The human did not answer immediately. He let the question sit, heavy and exposed. Then he said, "To know who you are when tested." Several counselors recoiled. Others stared, unblinking. The human explained that the galaxy had spoken of unity, law, and peace. Yet when threatened, it had responded with the same tools humanity knew too well. Fear, force, extermination orders signed without hesitation. That, the human said, told us enough. A low alarm sounded somewhere deep in the chamber. A notification only a few could see. A border alert, then another, and another. The human did not look surprised. He took a step back, hands still visible, posture calm. "You believed the war was over," he said. "Believed you had survived us." His gaze swept the chamber one last time. "The first wave was us asking a question," he said. "The silence you feel now is the answer reaching you." The Council said nothing. For the first time in its long existence, the Galactic Council had no response. And far beyond the chamber, humanity was already moving. The silence inside the Galactic Council chamber did not break. It deepened. It pressed down on every species present, like unseen gravity. Even the oldest counselors, beings who had watched stars be born and die, felt something new settle into their thoughts. It was not fear alone. It was uncertainty. The human remained standing at the center, unmoving, while alerts continued to ripple through private channels. Borders flickered. Fleets reported delays. Entire systems failed to respond on schedule. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic. But that was what made it worse. One counselor finally spoke, its voice lower than before. It accused the human of exaggeration, playing with timing errors and coincidence. It insisted that no species could move unseen at such scale. The human nodded, as if the objection was expected. "That is correct," he said. "No species here could." A new projection appeared. This one showed time instead of space, long lines stretching backward through decades. The human pointed to it. "While the galaxy debated borders, humans argued about survival," he said. "While you perfected balance, we perfected speed." The image shifted to human industrial worlds, not shining capitals, but harsh planets, scarred by mining and storms. Factories layered on factories, shipyards that never slept, automated systems repairing other automated systems. The Council watched in growing discomfort. The human explained that humanity had learned early that peace was fragile, that preparation mattered more than pride. Their history was filled with wars they did not start, disasters they could not avoid, and mistakes that cost millions of lives. "We changed," he said simply. "We stopped planning for victory. We planned for adaptation." A counselor interrupted, demanding to know why such preparations were hidden, why humanity pretended to be weaker than it was. The human met its gaze. "Because the galaxy rewards predictability," he said, "and punishes surprises." Several counselors shifted in their seats. Some bristled. Others looked away. The human continued, explaining that every human ship design had dozens of variations already tested in simulation. That commanders were trained not just to fight, but to fail creatively. To push enemies into revealing habits, formations, and limits. The first wave had been built around that idea. Another counselor asked why humanity accepted such heavy losses if this was all planned. Why sacrifice entire fleets? The human's voice hardened. Because survival does not care about comfort, he said, and neither does evolution. That answer echoed longer than the words themselves. A senior counselor, one who had presided over wars for thousands of years, leaned forward. It asked the question carefully, choosing each word. If this was only observation, it said, what comes next? The human did not answer immediately. Instead, he changed the projection again. This time it showed the galaxy's trade routes. The lifelines that fed empires, lines that glowed softly, overlapping like veins, then some of them dimmed. The human explained that the second phase had already begun, though calling it a wave would be misleading. There were no fleets advancing, no declarations, no banners. Humanity had learned long ago that wars were not won on battlefields alone. Freighters once considered neutral had quietly changed schedules. Markets had shifted. Key resources were suddenly scarce in the same regions that supplied council fleets. Small disruptions, each insignificant alone, but devastating together. This is not an attack, the human said. It is pressure. A counselor accused humanity of cowardice, of hiding behind economics instead of fighting openly. The human did not react. We fought openly, he said. You watched us burn. Now you are watching yourselves weaken. More alerts appeared. One counselor received word that a client species had defaulted on contracts. Another learned that fuel reserves were below projections. A third discovered that their shipyards were waiting on components that were no longer arriving. Panic began to fracture the chamber. Voices rose. Accusations flew between species. Some blamed the humans. Others blamed each other. Old grudges resurfaced, sharp and familiar. The human watched it unfold with quiet attention. You see, he said, this is what the first wave taught us. The council slowly turned back toward him. You are powerful together, he continued, but you are efficient alone. When stressed, you fragment. Protect yourselves first. That truth struck harder than any weapon. One counselor demanded to know if the humans intended to collapse the galaxy. If this was revenge. The human shook his head. No, he said. This is evaluation. He explained that humanity did not yet know what role the galaxy would play in their future. Partner, threat, burden. The first wave tested military response. The second tested cooperation under strain. So far, the results were disappointing, Counselor asked, almost pleading now what humanity wanted from them. The human's answer was calm but heavy, to see who adapts. The chamber trembled as a distant shockwave rippled through subspace. Not an explosion. A network failure. One of the Council's oldest communication hubs had gone offline. Not destroyed, just unreachable. The human did not smile. We learned something else in the first wave, he said. Your strength depends on systems you no longer understand. Fear finally took full root. Several counselors demanded emergency votes. Others tried to open channels to their home fleets, only to face delays. The human stood untouched by the chaos. As arguments spiraled, one small, quiet species did something unexpected. It spoke directly to the human and asked for dialogue, not demands, not threats, just talk. The human turned toward them. For the first time, his expression softened. The chamber fell into uneasy quiet once more. The galaxy was being tested, not by fire, but by change. And humanity was watching closely. The Galactic Council chamber had become a place of whispered panic. The towering confidence that once filled it was gone, replaced by urgent signals, half-heard reports, and faces locked in calculation. No one laughed now. No one mocked the human standing alone at the center. The small, quiet species that had asked for dialogue waited in silence, unsure if it had made a mistake by speaking first. Others watched it closely, already judging whether it would survive the coming changes. A senior counselor demanded that all incoming data be displayed publicly. It wanted clarity. It wanted control. The projections expanded. What appeared was not a battlefield. It was logistics. Star maps showed warehouses, refueling hubs, shipyards, and jump gate relays. One by one, markers changed color. It's not destroyed, delayed, reassigned, congested. Human presence was rarely direct. Instead, human influence moved like a shadow, touching everything without gripping anything. The human spoke again. You keep asking where the second wave is, he said. You are looking for fleets. You are looking for weapons. He gestured at the glowing network. This is the second wave. The council struggled to understand. Some protested that this was not war. Others argued that such actions violated ancient treaties. The human nodded. Yes, he said. That is why it works. He explained that humanity had learned a long time ago that fighting armies was expensive. Fighting systems was efficient. Ship destroyed removed one threat. A delayed shipment weakened thousands. Human planners had studied galactic dependence. Who relied on whom? Which species specialized and which depended on trade to survive? The council itself had encouraged this interdependence, believing it created peace. Humanity saw something else. They saw leverage. As the humans spoke, a new alert reached the chamber. One of the council's core fleets had been forced to stand down. Fuel reserves were below safety margins. Second fleet was now escorting freighters instead of guarding borders. A third had lost access to spare parts due to a supplier dispute. Species accused each other of hoarding, of betrayal, of secret deals with humans. Old alliances cracked under pressure. The human raised his hand slightly. The sound dampeners adjusted automatically. We are not strangling you, he said. We are observing what breaks first. That sentence chilled the room. The human answered honestly, as long as it takes. He explained that humans had no fixed timetable, no deadline for victory. The second wave would continue adjusting, learning, refining. Every reaction by the council fed new models. Every emergency vote revealed priorities. Every failure exposed weakness. You are still teaching us, he said. The idea that the galaxy itself was a lesson was unbearable to many. One counselor finally asked the question that had been circling since the first silence. What happens if we resist? The human did not hesitate. Then we move to the third wave, he said. The chamber stiffened. Several voices demanded to know what that meant. The human looked tired for the first time. It means we stop pretending you might adapt on your own. A deep tremor ran through the chamber as another subspace report arrived. A hidden human fleet had been detected at the edge of council space. Not advancing, not attacking, just waiting. The fleet's composition stunned even hardened strategists. Modular ships, Rapo-Draper vessels, mobile factories traveling with the armada. It was not a strike force. It was infrastructure. The human explained that the third wave was never meant to fight battles. It was meant to replace systems. Human fleets could build, supply, and sustain themselves indefinitely. They did not need council trade routes. They did not need council approval. They were becoming independent of the galaxy. That realization struck like a blow. If humanity could survive alone, then the galaxy had lost its greatest leverage. Sanctions meant nothing. Isolation meant nothing. Humanity had already prepared for it. Counselor whispered that this was madness, that no species could isolate itself and thrive. The human replied quietly, "We already did. On one planet, with enemies, disasters, and time itself trying to kill us." The small species that had asked for dialogue finally spoke again. It asked what humanity truly wanted, not tactically, not strategically, but morally. The chamber leaned in, even those who pretended not to care. The human considered the question. "We want to know if this galaxy is capable of change," he said. "The first wave tested your strength. The second tests your cooperation. The third will test your humility." That word carried weight. Humility. The council had not practiced it in a very long time. More alerts followed. Not disasters, but confirmations. Human offers of aid had been sent quietly to non-council systems affected by trade disruptions. Food shipments, medical technology, infrastructure support. Humanity was not only applying pressure, it was offering alternatives. Some counselors realized the danger immediately. This was not conquest. This was influence. Species helped by humans would remember it. They would align not out of fear, but gratitude. The balance of power was shifting without a single decisive battle. The human's voice remained steady. "You can still choose," he said. "You can adapt. Or you can cling to control until it collapses." The council chamber filled with low, fearful murmurs. Votes were proposed, emergency measures drafted, but for the first time, none of them felt final. None of them felt sufficient. Because somewhere between the first wave and the second, the galaxy had lost the initiative. Humanity had taken it without firing a shot. Human took a step back, signaling the end of his statement. Behind him, the stars continued their slow, indifferent drift. The galaxy was changing, and the third wave had not even begun. The Galactic Council did not vote that day. For the first time since its founding, procedure failed. Not because of rebellion, but because certainty was gone. Every proposal felt incomplete. Every response felt too slow. The chamber, once a symbol of order, had become a place of hesitation. The humans stood quietly while the council argued in low, urgent voices. Some demanded resistance. Others urged negotiation. A few whispered that surrender might be the only path left. None of them noticed that the human was no longer watching the chamber. He was watching the galaxy beyond it. When the noise reached its peak, he spoke again, and the sound dampeners carried his voice with perfect clarity. "You keep asking what comes next," he said. "Keep preparing for waves." The council turned toward him. "You still do not understand why there was a first one." The chamber stilled. The human activated the final projection. This one showed no fleets, no trade routes, no systems. It showed history. Images of ancient wars fought by council species, records of extermination campaigns, votes that erased entire civilizations because they were inconvenient, unstable, or simply different. The council shifted uncomfortably. The human did not accuse. He narrated. He spoke of how humanity had studied these records long before first contact, how they had debated whether joining such a galaxy was worth the risk, how some human leaders had argued for isolation, for hiding forever, for building walls no one could cross. But walls, the human said, only protect what is already safe. He explained that humanity had chosen another path, a harder one. The first wave was not a challenge. It was not revenge. It was restraint. "We needed to know," he said, "if you could stop yourselves." The words cut deeper than any threat. The council watched as footage played of the first human colonies attacked, of council fleets responding not with capture or warning, but with annihilation, of votes passed in seconds to authorize planetary sterilization. "You called us dangerous," the human said. "We wanted to see if you were right." Silence returned, but this time it carried shame. The human explained that humanity feared becoming what it had fought for centuries to avoid, an empire that destroyed first and justified later. They needed proof that the galaxy could be better. The first wave gave them that answer. Some counselors protested weakly, citing threats, instability, necessity. The human did not argue. "You are not unique," he said. "You made the same excuses once." A counselor finally asked the question no one else dared. "What happens now?" The human looked directly at the center of the chamber, at the ancient symbol of council authority. "Now," he said, "we stop testing." The words were calm but final. He explained that humanity had already made its decision. It's not about conquest, but about responsibility. The galaxy was too powerful, too interconnected, and too careless to be left unchanged. "The first wave showed us your reflexes," he said. "The second showed us your fractures. The third showed us your dependence." He paused. "This is the fourth." A ripple of alarm passed through the chamber. "This wave," the human continued, "is choice." Humanity was offering terms, not surrender, not obedience, transformation. The council would no longer sit above the galaxy. It would become part of it. Decisions would require transparency. Military actions would require oversight beyond the council itself. Species once labeled expendable would gain representation. Some counselors reacted with outrage, others with disbelief. One shouted that the council would never accept such humiliation. The human's expression did not change. "Then you will be replaced," he said, peacefully if possible. Naturally, if not, he revealed that dozens of non-council species had already agreed to new human-led frameworks. Trade, defense, and aid networks that did not answer to the council. Systems where cooperation was rewarded, not controlled. The council was no longer the center of the galaxy. It was just another node. The counselor asked what humanity gained from this. Power, control, dominion. The human shook his head. "We gained survival," he said, "the chance to be better than what we fear becoming." The small species that had first asked for dialogue spoke again, said the humans were still dangerous. The human nodded. Yes, he said, we are. Then he added quietly, but we are dangerous to ourselves first. That truth carried weight. Human history unfolded in the projection. Wars ended by exhaustion. Victories that felt like losses. Empires abandoned because they cost too much to maintain. Again and again, humanity choosing limits after discovering its strength. We do not trust power, the human said. That is why we build systems to restrain it. The council chamber felt smaller now, older, less certain of its place. One by one, counselors began to understand the final twist. Humanity was not taking control because it wanted to rule. It was taking control because it did not trust anyone else to hold it responsibly. The human stepped back, signaling the end. You can join us, he said. You can fade as the galaxy moves on. No threats followed, no countdowns, just inevitability. The council said nothing. Outside the chamber, human fleets continued building. Human aid ships continued arriving. Human systems continued spreading, not as conquerors, but as architects. The galaxy would not burn, would change. And long after the council's ancient chamber became a relic, the galaxy would remember the moment it froze in silence. It's not when humans attacked, but when humans chose to lead.